We didn't sound check, so can everyone just sound check real quick?
Check.
Okay, fine.
Check, mic, check.
Perfect.
Did I get my timing right? Did you hear fart?
I did. That's very good, God.
Alrighty.
Okay,
I might have to clear my throat a few times.
so Neil wants to know about force feeding your children,
Okay.
as far as I understand.
So
Why?
what's the topic name?
So
Child abuse. Should we just make it child abuse, but then in brackets I'll be like,
I was thinking like Neil's childhood traumas or a look into the past from Neil.
Yeah, because I've always been a fat kid at heart.
So we were trying to sort out topics before the podcast, and Neil had a very interesting suggestion. What's your suggestion, Neil?
Well, my suggestion is, could you look at an overweight child who has, let's say, gained weight through bad nutrition as child abuse through the parent?
I do think it's good that you sort of clarified that he's gaining the weight because of bad nutrition, because there are a subset of medical conditions that predispose you to being a little bit on the tubby side. Fair enough. We're not talking about that. We're talking about parents who have given their children the wrong food for a prolonged period of time. Should this be seen as child abuse? Thoughts, Garth?
yeah. So there's a couple of like it's a very serious issue, I think, and it's I think why Neil wants to talk about it. I want to maybe talk about it is that it's being seen every day, and it's starting to be like, should I reach out to the parent, or should I reach out to somebody else that's close and be like, someone needs to talk to the parent and without getting punched in the face, you know? Because what you see is you see exhibit A, parent, and then if the kid's not around, or you see the parent again, and then you see them with the kid, you're like, oh wow, it's happening to the kid as well. So it's the parent doesn't care for whatever reasons that they are overweight. Maybe they do have a medical condition or whatever it is, but they're clearly not in tune with caring about their lifestyle. And now the kid's suffering and the kid doesn't know better. So it's how do we label this? How do we not offend the parents? And how do we then try and get our community to just start saying
healthier.
something?
I think it's important to realize that health care is always going to be more successful if we're preventing disease than curing disease. We're very bad at curing. We've spoken about this on the podcast before. We've cured basically some bacterial infections with antibiotics, and that's about it. Nothing really gets cured. So prevention is actually the only cure. Shouldn't say prevention is better than cure. That's not true at all. Prevention is the only cure we have. So if we can influence the young, we'll have healthier generations to come. So I do think it's an important thing to focus on. And I do think that if you're phrasing it from the perspective of you're trying to look after the young so that they're healthy in their old age, I don't necessarily think parents will feel attacked or offended. You can't be like, why you make your kid so fat? Why are you so fat? Like, obviously that's going to offend them. But I think if you approach it from a patient education perspective, people respond better to that.
Do you guys think we should actually go into depth a little bit as to why we would see this as child abuse?
Neil's not letting go of the child abuse.
Yeah.
No, but like why it becomes child
No,
abuse
so-
to like
yeah.
what like because for me that's the fact is like cool, yeah, okay, my kid's a bit of weight, like he'll shrug it off when he gets older. But do they? And what is the long-term effects of that actions at a young age that actually now makes life considerably harder for anyone as they just age?
Yeah. One
No.
thing that I will say there, sorry, G, just to like medically interject. If you have someone who consumes too many calories, the calories will always go to all of the sort of essential functions first, like brain function and organ function. Then they'll be stored in the muscle up to a certain extent because it's limited storage for muscle. And then everything will be stored as fat thereafter. All right. And there is no limit to how much we can store as fat. And the reason for this is because once a fat cell gets too big, once the fat cell is too fat, it will split in two and make two fat cells. And then those two fat cells will get fatter and fatter and split in two and make 4 and 16. And it becomes an exponential climb of fat cells. When we diet down, let's say this kid's like, okay, I've got my life together, I would like to get really lean. You never, ever, ever, ever lose total number of fat cells. The fat cells can get smaller, but you will always have more fat cells. You will never be able to get that total number back down to ground zero. So when you do start consuming excess calories, you have much more capacity to store fat, which makes it much more difficult later in life to stay lean. And this starts literally from childhood.
Just a quick question there. So to lose those fat cells, would you have to do liposuction,
Liposuction,
cut it
correct.
out?
Correct.
So if you got, so if
It
you
has
do
to be
really, really
surgical.
try, and now you've dropped massive weight and you're as lean as we can get, you need to go for liposuction or that kind of thing. That was just a question I had. But I think going back to Neil's question then, and to really direct this home to not make a gain, parents seem like we are saying, hey, you're the issue and you are abusing your child. Like we were joking about like Neil's childhood or whatever it is, it's just a joke. But an abusive kind of physical abuse or sexual abuse, this is food abuse, and you are setting your child up for some kind of failure because the person's going to be kind of teased, seen as the fat person, that kind of thing. And if they are like that from, I mean, we seeing some kids 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, like in a state of there's no return for this kid. They are at a point now where if you try to fix it now, they're at that point where I don't know if you can call it a 4, 8, 12, 16, like a multiplication thing. They're on the very far end of that multiplication. And it is that parent's fault. It's your duty as a parent to make sure that your kid is healthy. And I mean, I'm always having the conversation with Granny, and Granny's like, yeah, but it's only on Wednesday that the kids have a sour worm each and one other thing, a biscuit. So a tater Granny on a Wednesday, they only see her once a week. It's a sour worm and a biscuit. And I said, I understand that. And I was having just an honest, open discussion with Granny on Wednesday when I saw her, because I was giving her the cars for the day. And I said, but you must understand that you don't know what's happening on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So you saying it's once a week. Other grannies saying it's once a week. Then they with me on a Tuesday at swimming, it's once a week. Then on the weekend, they at the box, or it's Easter, or it's every day then. So it's every day that there is something, let's call it a bad sugar in their diet, which I'm fine with. I'm fine with a 20%, so 80-20, because that's how I eat. So 80-20, and they need to know what is good food, what is bad food. And Emily will still say, but Daddy, is this a good food? And I'll say, yes, fruits are good, X, Y, Z. Then she'll say, is there too much sugar in here? And I'll explain how much sugar that could possibly have, whether it's a good or a bad food. And at the end of the day, that's what I'm trying to teach my kids. So yes, my kids are potentially having one bad food every day, if you want to call it, which I to some degree don't want or agree on. But at the end of the day, people are not doing that. They are making every meal a bad choice and every other meal then a bad choice.
Yeah, but there's also two sides to even this equation. We're saying that obviously you can gain weight through incorrect nutrition, and excess weight gain obviously is a problem. Whether it's like on your joints, whether you're being teased, whether you can't move properly because of certain things. Now you have excess weight on your frame, and obviously excess weight then leads to other complications as that person gets older. But on the flip side, it's also like if your kid doesn't have a weight problem because at this age they're young enough, their metabolism's fine, they're growing, they're burning through calories, but you're still feeding them incorrect foods, quantities of sugar, developing those taste buds, and now creating sort of maybe insulin sensitivity, etc. There are still going to be things that they are going to struggle with. So it's not even also nutrition from a weight gain perspective. There's certain habits and things that can also develop which make it harder to change lifestyle. And when that eventually catches up with them, it's now harder to cut back on those things. So that is also that theory of like, oh, my kid can have it because they don't have a weight problem. Like, not correct.
So I think you're exactly right with that. So that's exactly where most of us think. So most of us think you can eat this because you're playing sports or because you're not maybe picking up weight. So I know a lot of kids also that are not necessarily overweight at all. I mean, they're good swimmers, things like that. If they're in the pool, you can see that kid is pretty lean, like
Yeah.
there's no weight issue. But I know for a fact that they are the kid that eats all the sweets or there's a bit of a ADHD now issue. So that kid at the party is now the one buzzing around. So
Yeah.
there's that issue with their brain now being stimulated or overstimulated that then they can't concentrate. Then he's the kid that's normally naughty at the parties as well. He'll be pulling this, beating this, breaking that, whatever it is. And it's not his fault. It's because he's allowed to eat that many sweets. He's allowed to just do this. And then there's all the like out of control things. Now there's bad parenting from that point, and there's also bad parenting now because he's now seen as the naughty kid at the party.
Yeah.
But if he just had half the sugar that he had that day, like my kids did, he wouldn't be doing that. Then it's like, oh, but James is always well behaved. Well, he's having half the consumption of sugar that the other kid had.
Yeah, I mean, and that starts obviously with first meal of the day and what someone's having for breakfast, and that translates into going to the rest of the day. So, you know, we're getting it wrong on so many levels in terms of like not just okay, what is your kid having, but it's how is that making them feel? How is that making them behave? Not just about okay, then they're gaining weight. So there is more to the story than hey, like okay, your kid is just obese, or hey, does your kid concentrate well? No. Well, maybe that can also be a sugar related issue, but also like setting them up for things like diabetes later in life. Um, and just habits, like habits happen from an early age. So if you're used to having the sweets on a daily basis or after a meal, you get attached to that. Like the minute you try cut back on something, you're like, it's not necessary that you needed to have that sugar. It's just that almost dopamine hit of like I'm used to having that craving after my meal and I have that little something sweet, and there's different ways to work around that. Like you can have something else that gives you a similar effect. But those little habits translate into later in life that become harder and harder to break. So there were certain things that I was maybe blessed with in my childhood where my mother encouraged us to, have X amount of vegetables and like we weren't given sweets that often and whatever, and develop that. At a later stage, they were there and we could have if we wanted. But, it wasn't like we knew what came first, and there's that education has to start at an early age. And if you rewarding your kid with sweets or bad food, you are developing a pattern that they're associating in terms of having like a reward system with food. And then when that gets older, it's like, oh, I'm having a bad day. I need to feel better. Let me go to McDonald's. And that's what's going to happen when they start serving themselves or getting their own food or doing everything else. And that's just cut those patterns out as early as you can and develop a healthy relationship around food. And at a young age, obviously, a kid doesn't know any better, and it's your job to do that. Not, oh, my kid's making a noise. I'm going to give them the sweetie to keep them quiet. There's so many things which we use food as our reward or that buffer to getting them to bribe and do what we want to do, and that becomes a problem.
But I think there's also like the fine line between, because I do it as a parent now. So like the kids are like at the gym and I have to have them there for a certain day. It is what it is. So I try and give them certain things to do, and it's working now. They're actually playing outside, and I've got a few things down. And Emily will come to me, "Can I watch now?" I'm like, "No, go find something to do." And the more I've been doing that, it's been like 3 weeks that I've been doing that now. Now they don't even come to me and ask me. They just play. They'll come to me and ask me for food. They're like, "Can we have a cracker now?" So I'm like, "Yes, cracker, peanut butter on, whatever it is." But I'm really trying to avoid that reward system. But also, there's a fine line, also, or there's a difference, I think, between using certain things like technology, like letting them watch or play games, or food, like a treat, to just keep them occupied or keep them in control. And then there's the abusive side of I'm actually feeding my kid on a daily basis very, very poor nutrition, and it's becoming abusive. So that's, I think, where I want to try and lean on to,
Yeah.
because I think we've covered quite a bit about, like not rewarding and things like that, and making sure that we're not treating or like stimulating someone, or creating bad habits. But there's that abuse happening because I'm actually physically not thinking about how much bullshit I'm feeding my child. Then Granny's doing it as well. Granny doesn't know better. Granny's 80, 90 years old. Back in the day, we could just have cereal for breakfast because it's not loaded with stuff. Granny doesn't even know that it's cooked in these oils, and that because they were, home cooking them with new oil, with good oil potentially back in the day, even though it's a seed oil, it's, it's not reused. I mean, now we're having chips that are probably on their fifth cycle of seed oil. Now what's that actually doing to your body? So that's where I want parents to be more aware of, just friends around you as well. Like, say something. Just if like, hey man, listen, I see that you're not looking so healthy yourself. You know, like, are you struggling with so and so's meals at school? Or food at school, or eating? Bring it up in a light-hearted. So, what do you pack for lunch boxes at school? And then they'll say, "Oh, I'm really struggling because he's fussy or this or that. So I just pack in this." And then just hit it up with a, "Yeah, but like, it's not a great option. Why don't you try this?" You don't have to be like, "Sarah's looking fat. What are you clearly feeding them wrong?" Try bring it up the other way around so that person doesn't take offense. But at the end of the day, someone needs to say it.
A lot of people leave it up to the doctor to say it. I think a lot of people think when you go for your annual checkup, the doctor's gonna say, "Bro, the doctor wants you out of his office like now." He's not gonna then delve into like a lifestyle modification. So I agree with you. I do think it's up to your loved ones to kind of I'm not saying doctors shouldn't be doing that, should be doing it, but in general they won't. And it's up to your loved ones to kind of say, by the way, we're concerned for your long-term health. We would like you to be around for a long period of time. I don't actually care how you look. I
Yeah.
would like you to be healthy.
Yeah, and like Neil was saying now, was that it doesn't come down to sometimes look, it's the abuse on your body. So like you don't need to be fat and overweight to be diabetic or to become diabetic. And once you're diabetic, things are downhill.
Yeah, for sure.
Like you can obviously explain that. I mean,
And also we see what's called visceral fat gain. So people who gain fat around their organs more than subcutaneous fat gain, where they gain it sort of this sort of classic love handles or thick thighs. But that's actually even more dangerous.
yeah, that's the pressure on your body. I mean, I had a client sign up this week. I was like, where do I know you from? That big guy that came, Chris too. He's like, no, I played rugby. I'm like, what year? Okay, cool. You played for NTK when I was at Hammiestel. And this guy's big. He's like 198, 100 and easy, 120 something, 130 kilo, like big guy. And he weighed in, scored 106 on the in body. I'm like, geez, okay, it was a lot of muscle, but his visceral fats were at 9. So he's almost on that borderline. So if you had to see this guy, I mean, you saw him, like he doesn't look like he's that out of shape. Like he's just a big dude. But there's clearly that much pressure. And for a big guy like that to have that much extra pressure on his body, you know, like that's not healthy.
For
Like,
sure.
And he's at a point now, he's got 2 kids, a little bit younger than mine. He's like, I've never been this unhealthy, but you wouldn't see it. But he can feel that. And like now his first show the night, he died. Like he died. And he can obviously just feel that he's on a bad wicket. You know?
Did you guys chat about the skinny kid who can have whatever they want?
Yeah, so Neil touched on it a bit.
So it's exactly the same
But
thing.
just run through
Yeah.
it again, just so like what you
No, what we just said is not just about weight. Like the skinny kid who can just eat, it's still poison.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
exactly.
the mental health side. So the kid was running around at
Mental-
the party.
A physical health
breaking
as well. So
things.
you don't know what's
Yeah.
going on the inside. So all of your hormone profiles depend very much on what you eat. And hormone profiles won't become evident until later in life. So you might be setting them up for like, if they're a male, low testosterone levels going forward. If they're a female, a tendency towards polycystic ovarian syndrome. You don't know what you're doing hormonally to that child. Same with things like bone mineral density. Have they got enough nutrients to actually form good bones? Because you must understand when a child is growing, their bones are getting more. There's more bone. Where's that coming? Where's that calcium coming from? If you don't give them enough micronutrients, it comes from the bone itself. So it's going to take bone out of bone to make it longer and less compact. So now you get long, fragile bones because you know what I'm saying? There's so much more than, oh, this child is skinny, they can eat whatever they want.
If a kid falls at about 5 years old and breaks their collarbone, is that fairly
It's normal.
natural or
Yeah,
is
it's
that
quite normal.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, because like you just bring that up. Like there's these 2 healthy girls that come to swimming, and the one's got a broken collarbone. I was like, is this undernutrition, things like that? And that just had me thinking, like,
We actually do see a lot of malnutrition with swimmers just because of the total calories burned. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Swimmers, you got to feed like
my kids are dead when they get out the pool. Like I feed them. That's the day that they come to the gym, and they are hungry. Like I'll go through like a box of crackers and peanut butter. Like they'll have like 3 or 4 crackers each straight after swimming.
no, it's important to nourish. Look, all sports, all children, blah blah blah. But swimmers easily fall through the cracks
Yeah.
because you actually want them to be quite long and lean, so you think, oh, it's working, but actually,
Yeah.
they need help.
So I think we made a point here, and I think the child abuse point needs to be made a bit more clear. And again, it needs to be seen in the community that like these parents need to just be helped. Like it's just education and help, and that's all we want to do. We want to like not single you out, but we want to group you into like, okay, cool, XYZ, and then you have a support structure to be like, okay, I'm poor at certain things. We want them to say, I'm very poor at trying to plan my kids' nutrition because clearly you can see I'm struggling because they normally are overweight or unhealthy. And then how do we help you move forward? And it's prepping meals, find other moms that are planning their meals, cooking simple. Like I like to keep it simple. The kids, I flipping did those Woolies little rings, those like nice little pumpkin rings, pumpkin puffs, honey on, egg white next to it. They'd finish the egg white and didn't touch the pumpkin rings and pumpkin puffs. With honey on, they're kind of sweet, they're quite tasty. They finish the egg white. You guys still hungry? No. Like, okay. I went through all the effort of doing that, where it's as simple as cooking some boiled eggs. Like my kids, like not often, most kids don't like egg to some degree, how it smells, whatever, or the egg yolk texture. My kids are very texture about the yolk, but a simple egg white is what you're doing. And that you can't tell me is not easy to do. Fry up some egg white, boil some eggs, break the egg white off, add some salt.
I think parents need to realize that there's no shame in asking for help. A lot of times you'll sort of have parents who are like, no, I know what I'm doing. I just need to, get this right and then it'll be fun.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're doing because your child is massively overweight. I think that's enough evidence to say you don't know what you're doing. People are very keen to go, no, it's fine. I do know what I'm doing. I just need to just ask for help. Doesn't even have to be three of us, but seek professional help because there's so much misinformation online, I suppose, and also just within any sort of like medical or paramedical advice. Find someone who's doing it the way you wish you were doing it and ask what they're doing.
But do you guys think there's a line in the sand where, let's say, you see this kid and this kid is clearly overweight, heading down the wrong road? Maybe the parents are also overweight or not, but it doesn't really make a difference. That and then you see this kid sitting at some place eating burgers and fries and a milkshake, or they're in the mall and before their mom's got to the till to pay for something, they've got something in their hand already, whether it's a 2-liter Coke or whatever the case is. Is there that point in where, should there be a system in place of going, hey, your kid is overweight, either you have to come for educational classes on some sort of nutrition sort of thing, or you're getting home visits to make sure that, hey, your kid's feeling so better? Because it sounds small, but like this creates so much strain on the whole system and the workforce and everything that revolves around our lives later in life. Like the more obese kids there are today, the worse the workforce is later, the more strain on healthcare systems and everything that comes into play. And we're sitting in a world which is sugar on our shelves, bad food everywhere, available at any point in time. People are just plugged into literally sugar into their veins sort of thing. Where does that line come into play where it's like, okay, cool, this is what we're doing if we feel like your kid is on a bad road, and is there a place for someone to step in and do something, or what does that potentially look like as a solution?
I think it's so hard because dealing with the schools so much, the schools don't even have a say. Like teachers really struggle. Teachers are trying to like firstly teach your child to be smarter and to become an adult or just be better, and they're so limited. They're limited by how much pressure they get from like a governing body, by the parents. I mean, we had a kid get a box bite today, and then one of the teachers messaged and said, "We need to limit the jumping in class. It's too dangerous because now the kids can't play rugby." I'm like, I'm trying to get them to jump on a 30-centimeter box. Like, if you're telling me that I can't try to teach them a little bit of plyometrics, where are we going with this? Who's going to supervise them jumping at home then when they are trying to jump? Or are you going to now limit your kid from jumping? So it's like, I think what you're trying to hit on there is that who has like authority to say, we notice that your kid is struggling with this, this, and this, and it can be physical, like gross motor skills. It can be like obesity or just malnutrition. And then thirdly, like a mental space, like your kid's a bit behind or they're lacking, whatever it is. And parents need to almost be more acceptable from like schooling systems, maybe to now be, to have authority from government or something like that to actually call that parent out and monitor it and be like, hey, we like see it.
The problem
But-
you run into is like the government doesn't give a shit. And actually, the government would prefer you to be sick. That's why the food pyramid was changed.
Yeah.
That's so like let's say government mandated everyone had to get COVID vaccines because they understand health better than you do. That's essentially what you're saying. We understand health more than you, so we should make the decisions. I think that's a mistake because as soon as you put too much influence in the hands of an authority figure, you lose free will.
But who's going to be there saying, listen, parent, I think you, so like it's almost like me. So we see the kids coming through. I almost want to have my head coach and all of my kids' classes coming through be like, we need to touch base with the teacher. The teacher needs to touch base with the parent. And together, the three of us say, this is what we notice. And then give that information to the parent and say, we highly recommend you do X, Y, Z.
But that's what I think what we're doing with this podcast is important because if we can empower people with knowledge, you don't run into that situation. The parent can say something, the teacher can say something, people can say something, but not your kid is too fat. It's here's how you can change your life. I think education is power, and I think that power needs to fall in the right hands because the wrong education is also very powerful in the wrong direction.
Yeah, but that's sort of the question that really was asking is like, is there that line in the sand? Like, like you take regular a child being abused at home, whether it's been beaten or done whatever else. There's like, okay, you call Childline and someone goes to save that kid. Like, yeah, weight gain is not like physically right now in the sort of harm of sort of abuse, but like it gets to that point where there's that chance of that kid getting out of not getting diabetes, heart disease, or joint problems or whatever. It's going to happen if there's no change in line, and so how is there that line where there's a federation where you go, or whoever it might be, to go, okay, we need to go have a conversation, or is that point, because, or is that on us as health professionals to bring that and educate that and sort of have that tough conversations that maybe we should be having and don't avoid? Because it's from my perspective, like I have that knowledge and I can see what that kid's future is going to be when you see it happening in front of you, and all you want to do is like reach out, but like that parents might not appreciate those words that you're going to have with them. But do you rather then take those words and have it, whether they appreciate it or not, at least you tried, than setting that kid up for potential misery the rest of its life, or
I
feeling that way?
would say yes. I believe in pissing people off. Like it gets the point across. So you
Yeah.
lose maybe they don't like you. Like they probably don't like you anyway. So
Well, I was joking because I was driving home this week and there was, I think it was a bucky. So it was a little like Corsa bucky. It's getting close to home. And so there was a mom driving. Granny was driving. Mom was in the front seat with a little girl on her lap. And some people can say, but it's like back roads, whatever you want, but it's Okavango main road. Like Cape Gates here, it's a main road, big intersection, trucks. Like, and I just like, so I wound down and I was gonna say something, and then the lady kind of like looked at me. So I'm like, don't you think the kid should be in a seat? And the look that I got, like they didn't even reply. I was like, did they hear me firstly? Because I was like, maybe they didn't hear what I said. But I didn't say that many words that like, do you think your child should be in a seat? Could have gone any other way. Yes, I get that it's a 2-seat car. Then get a different car, you sit in the back of the bucky with your kid like in a seat in the front. So it's like that. It's like there's this place in time where you say something to somebody and it just falls completely on deaf ears. And how far can you go to say, like what Neil's saying, is that you're doing this, we're here to help, contact us. Like there should be a helpline almost as well. Like hey, I've seen this abuse at this school in this thing. This is who you should contact.
I do think that it's important to also understand that I do agree that it's a form of child abuse. It's the same as if you feed your pet until they're just enormous and you never let them exercise. That's animal abuse. I agree 100% with that. But it's different to physical and sexual abuse. I've worked personally with a lot of real abuse, if I can call it that. And the detriments are forever. Now, I'm not saying that health detriments not forever, but there are things you can do as an adult to take charge of your health and live a long, healthy life. For example, I was a very overweight kid, and now I've taken charge of my life, and like one of the healthiest people I know. It's not the same with other abuse that you go through.
Yeah, so we can't put it into the same category.
I wouldn't. I think it's on the same spectrum, but I don't think it's the same category.
Yeah, I mean, look, every situation is obviously different. Like you started that journey at a very young age, right? Like you were in your teen years when you started training and exercising. Now, if you had fast forwarded that to 10 years later before you started doing anything, like how much worse would your situation be? How much harder does that situation obviously get?
But I mean, then you can't
Yeah.
blame the parents. Like my parents never made me do anything. I did
No.
it myself. I chose, okay, now I would like to be different.
Yeah.
So
no,
now
I'm saying,
who
but
would
that's a
blame
choice. But also, if you're in a household which doesn't educate you around that, or you have those influences around you where it's like acceptable to this is how we eat, or this is the lack activity that we sort of subscribe to, or you're not encouraged to do any better, that gets exponentially harder like through the years for you to sort of make those changes.
For sure.
And that's the thing. So for most kids, if you at least in your parents' house till you're 18 or whatever that is, that's a long time to then face those facts and sort of have it. Like I've had friends who were, overweight as young kids and found the gym in their teenage years and then, had six packs and biceps by the time they were 18, but that was also through their choice, but they were always sort of sporting. And that's sort of, they might have been a little bit susceptible to weight gain as a kid, but, when it's like, okay, I'm not susceptible, and then all of a sudden I start maybe gaining weight into my teenage years and doing whatever else and then going through, then it becomes sort of a different scenario, maybe harder for that person to sort of get out of that situation. Because for most people, I mean, I know most sporting people, like even they go through high school being sporting, maybe a year or two out of school, and then into the 20s, there's that weight gain sort of category where people just start putting on weight. So it's potentially only really going to get worse as someone gets older.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a choice, but what I'm sort of saying is parents need to know that it's their responsibility to either set their kids up for an easier road or not. And like you have to take responsibility for that as a parent. And it's not just about weight gain and whatever else, there's other aspects of it. And if your kid is overweight, it's your fault to the most part of having, and you need to take responsibility for that. And you the one who's educating your kid and making those hard decisions because at that age they can't do it themselves.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think especially up to the age of 13. So everything that Neil said, I think a kid up until the age of 13 needs extra guidance, because from 13 to 18 you're going to start picking up your own trends, friends, sports, things like that that could catch you onto a good track. Then when you leave school and you don't do this, you don't do that, then you're on your own, and you should be smart enough to a degree. Then, like, I don't want to say I don't care about anyone older than 20, because you should be able to be smart enough to fix your own life. But that's why I think I focus on kids, because they don't know better. So from the age of grade 1 to grade 7 kind of thing, which is where I try and highlight and help, that's key. And I think parents need to really focus on that.
I agree.
Avenue. All right.
Sweet.
Cool.
Cool.
Wrap it up.
Nothing else, Neil?
I'm good.